Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're bringing you a truly epic engineering battle. We're putting modern electric vehicles and traditional gas-powered cars head-to-head against one of Mother Nature's absolute most destructive forces, deep floodwater. In this Explainer, we're going to break down the specific mechanics, the hidden dangers, and the ultimate survival guides for navigating high waters, pulling straight from the actual engineering specs and expert safety guidelines. It's a totally fascinating clash of modern tech and the raw elements. So let's get right into it.
It's the ultimate question, right? I mean, we've all been taught since we were kids that water and electricity are a terrible, highly dangerous combination. It's a super common fear. So it's totally natural to wonder, if you drive a massive rolling battery into a giant puddle, is that basically the same as trying to wash your toaster while it's plugged in? Do the rules of physics just suddenly change when you're behind the wheel of an EV? Well, before we pit these two technologies against each other, we really have to establish the golden rule of driving in floods. And this applies regardless of what's under your hood. Scrap Car Comparison states that it can take only 6 inches of water for you to lose control of your car. Seriously, just 6 inches. And the AA, they strongly recommend staying away from even 4 inches of water. Why? Because if that water is moving, it takes incredibly little force to lift and completely sweep away even the heaviest of vehicles. The absolute best way to survive a flood is just to avoid driving into it in the first place.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the water and electricity myth.
We need to clear up the biggest misconception about electric vehicles right out of the gate here. We've got to separate the Hollywood explosions from actual automotive engineering. There's this pervasive myth that an EV will just instantly spark and explode the second water hits its chassis. But guys, that is simply not true. Electric vehicles are packed with highly advanced safety systems. If the car detects that it's being submerged, built-in circuit breakers are designed to literally instantly trip. This completely cuts the power and dramatically reduces the likelihood of any immediate fire or explosion in the water. You aren't driving a fragile toaster, you are driving a highly regulated piece of modern technology.
Section 2, the head-to-head showdown.
So, knowing that an EV won't just blow up on impact, how do these two completely different vehicle architectures actually fare against the water? Well, there's a fundamental engineering difference between the two. Traditional internal combustion engine, or ICE cars, are essentially giant air pumps. They rely entirely on breathing in oxygen to mix with fuel and create combustion. If you block that air, or, replace it with water, the engine simply dies. EVs, on the other hand, don't breathe. They have absolutely no air intake requirements. Their power comes from a sealed chemical reaction, which actually gives them a surprisingly submarine-like advantage in deep water. And this lack of breathing is exactly why traditional gas guzzlers die so quickly in flooded streets. It causes a catastrophic event called hydrolocking. See, if you drive a gas car into water deep enough that liquid cascades into the air intake, the engine tries to compress that water inside the cylinders instead of air. But as we know, water doesn't compress. The results? Absolute instant engine destruction. You end up with bent pistons and a completely ruined motor. It is literally lights out for the car. Now, what's really interesting about this is a specific alphanumeric code, IP67. This is the strict regulatory standard that EV manufacturers actually use. It means that the massive battery packs and the high-voltage components are heavily sealed and waterproofed against dust and temporary submerging in water. Because EVs lack that vulnerable engine air intake and have this tough IP67 shielding around their high-voltage heart, they're actually structurally way better equipped to survive an immediate plunge than a gas car. But let's be real, EVs are not completely invincible here. While the gas car has fatal vulnerabilities like the engine intake and the alternator, the EV still has plenty of parts that water can absolutely destroy. Even though the main battery is sealed tight, floodwaters can wreak absolute havoc on the auxiliary components. We're talking about delicate sensors, cooling pumps, fans, and all those complex underbody wiring connections. The heart might survive the plunge, but the nervous system can still get incredibly waterlogged and completely fail. Which brings us to Section 3, the real danger, post-flood aftermath. See, the EV might comfortably win the initial battle of driving through the puddle without stalling, but the hidden threat, the truly dangerous part, is delayed. And this is a terrifying concept we really need to talk about: thermal runaway. If floodwater, and especially a highly corrosive saltwater, eventually eats through those IP67 seals and breaches the massive lithium-ion battery pack, it causes internal short circuits. Now, this doesn't usually happen while you're actually in the water. It happens hours, days, or even weeks after the flood has receded. The battery cells start heating each other up in an uncontrollable chain reaction, creating a massive, extremely difficult to extinguish fire. Because of this delayed, sneaky threat, the village of Key Biscayne has actually released specific safety guidelines on what to look out for. If your EV has been in a flood, you have to use your senses. Be incredibly alert for hissing or popping noises coming from the car. Watch out for unexpected smoke or strange sweet or maybe metallic odors, and physically inspect the car for any bulging panels near the battery compartment underneath. Any of these are immediate, blaring red flags that thermal runaway might be starting.
So the crucial point is how we handle this. Section 4, surviving a flood safely.
How do we practically navigate these situations out in the real world to protect ourselves and our cars? If you absolutely positively cannot avoid driving through a flooded area, here are the strict techniques you gotta use. First, obviously check your owner's manual for wading depth, but generally speaking, never let the water exceed the wheel hubs or the lower edge of your doors. When you enter the water, you must maintain a very steady, consistent speed. Do not stop. If you stop, the bow wave of water you are pushing forward can collapse right back into unprotected areas of the car. And finally, be highly aware that the rear of an EV can become unexpectedly light and buoyant, causing you to lose traction entirely.
Now, if the worst has happened and your EV was submerged, this is your immediate post-flood action plan. Step 1. Do not drive or charge the vehicle under any circumstances. The car's battery management system, or BMS, will usually isolate the high voltage if it detects an anomaly, but you just shouldn't risk it. Step 2. If it is safe to do so, move the car at least 50 feet away from any structures or buildings due to that severe fire risk we talked about. Step 3. Do not try to dry it out yourself like a wet smartphone in a bag of rice. Just don't. And step 4, you must have an authorized technician formally inspect the integrity of those high-voltage seals before the car is ever used again.
So to bring it all together, an electric vehicle's sealed architecture makes it vastly superior to a gas car when you're crossing a flooded street. It simply won't choke and die on the water. But the incredibly corrosive nature of floodwater means that if the moisture gets inside that battery pack later on, the resulting damage is completely catastrophic. Basically, EVs might win the battle against the puddle, but the water can still win the war. Before we wrap up, I just want to send a massive thank you to all of you, our listeners and viewers, for tuning into The Explainer, exploring these intense engineering matchups and uncovering how our everyday tech holds up against the extremes. That's what this show is all about. Your curiosity is exactly what drives this Explainer, and we truly couldn't do it without you. Stay safe out there on the roads, keep learning, and as climate patterns shift and floods become more common, it leaves us with one final, pretty big question. Are our cities truly ready for an electrified future? We'll catch you in the next Explainer.